Oh, here goes, and welcome to the 161st episode of Throwback Hoops. Woody V is in the house. Please follow the show on YouTube and wherever you follow your podcasts. And as always, I'm joined by my main man, Robbie Clayton. How you doing, buddy?
What's up, Woods? Doing well. Sunday morning, not a common time that we record, but yeah, it wasn't a lot else to do today, right? So looking forward to chat with you today. And as always, a lot of news, right?
Yeah, for sure. You're off on a family holiday this week, right? So we had to do the Sunday morning.
Looking forward to it, yeah.
All right, let's get this show on the road then, man. Why don't you take us away with your jersey?
Sweet as. So this is a very new jersey. It actually arrived yesterday, Wood. So I did a bit of an order. Had about 4 arrive yesterday. So I'll stand up and show you this one. You know I've wanted this one for a while, so I'll show you what I'm rocking today.
So for our audio listeners that can't see, Robbie's wearing the ATL number 10 Zaccharie jersey. So I was just telling you, look at his game log over the last week or two. How consistent has he been? So, yeah.
Yeah, he's shown a lot of improvement, Wood. So, yeah, I'm really pleased to have this guy on the Hawks. So, as you can see, it's a Nike Zaccharie Risacher Atlanta Hawks red jersey. Still only 19 years of age, Woods, which is pretty amazing there. So, the Hawks rookie is currently averaging 12.1 points, 3.6 rebounds, 1.3 assists over 66 games. So, he's been pretty durable this year. 12.1 is pretty impressive. He's already had 6 games over 20 points this season. And yeah, I just feel like if you looked at those game logs and even just the eye test with watching him like we do, he does seem to have improved a little bit each month. He's got some sneaky athleticism there, right? He's had a couple of big jams these last couple of weeks where he's, putting the ball on the floor and everything else like that. I think we called it early with this guy. He's got a high basketball IQ and an even higher work ethic. So that's 2 things you really want from a young player like this. And all you do is hear the Hawks just rave about the talent and how good they think this guy's going to be. So yeah, been really pleased with him, Woods. Look, it's not the normal number 1 draft pick. We know he's not even. He's in the conversation for Rookie of the Year. We're not sure if he'll get that, but it was an interesting draft this year. But I've been really pleased with how he's gone. What are your thoughts been on the Frenchie?
Well, I think he's come into the league at 19, right? That's a huge advantage. You mentioned that. We're going to talk about Josh Giddey later. He came into the league at 18 and 19 or so. He's only 22 now. So he's had 3-4 years to really learn the game. And at 22, 23, we're seeing Josh Giddey's full potential now. I think with Zach, we'll see something similar. Because he's got those years to work on his game. When he's in his early 20s, we'll really see the full, complete player he is in 3 or 4 years' time. And I think Atlanta Hawks have taken that long-term view on him. Let's invest in his future. And just throughout this year, you've seen he's a sponge, willing to learn off others, improve aspects of his game, do the little X's and O's. So I think the future's bright for him.
Absolutely. No, I totally agree. Look, if I could pick maybe a couple of things, maybe a little bit more playmaking from it. It's obviously hard when you're on a team with Trey who dominates the possession there, but, maybe try and get those assist numbers up a bit. And look, we mentioned that sneaky athleticism, continue to sort of work on the defensive end. He's a pretty, lightly sort of built guy. I think he'd probably be 80 kilos or something like that. We know a lot of these, these basically teenagers, he still is a built like that. So he's going to get stronger and stronger there. But yeah, definitely a bright future. And pleased to get this jersey. I haven't had a rookie jersey of any of the class this year, so I had to get out number 1 pick, and Zaccharie Risacher.
Yeah, and as you said, he's still got time to grow into that body, right? And his rebounding, his ability to compete in the paint is going to improve as time goes on. So, good one. So let's stick with the theme. Let's go to card of the week for you, man. I think we'll just go with that now, right?
Yeah, sweet. We'll do it back to back. No worries. Well, you mentioned this guy's name already in the show, Wood. So after the week this guy's had, I know we're going to talk about it in the next segment. I had to show a Josh Giddey card this week. So I've got a really nice one for you this week. So this is a 2021 Donruss Optic rookie card graded PSA 10. So look at that, Woods. Look at all the sparkly stuff happening on this one. So hopefully that comes across right on the camera there. So PSA 10, so you can't get a higher grading than that. They're a little bit boring, the back of these cards. Like I say now, you don't get like those 90s cards that we like there. But yeah, really nice card there. Yeah, I know we're going to talk a bit about him, so I won't go too much about it. But Emily picked this one this morning. I gave her the choice on which one of my Giddies she picked. But yeah, geez, it's been a thrill to watch him, especially this last month or so. And
what year is that card from?
So it's a 2021. So
2021. So back then, Josh Josh Giddey still had an Australian accent, right?
He did, yeah. And so he's actually been copying a bit of flack, hasn't he, for that? He did that interview, and there was a few words, like you said, so, like that. That was one sort of word. But, as I sort of maybe pointed out at the time, Woods, he's probably lived in America, 4 years, something like that now. You've never lived in America, and you say some words with an American accent. So we won't go too hard.
That's true.
A few people have been rubbishing about that. It's like, come on, let him be, sort of thing. And I know, like, when we saw some of those Boomers guys in the last Olympics, there's some random accents going on between them, sort of there, right? I know we picked up with Josh Green and a few other guys like that, but no, we'll let his accent slide if he keeps putting up numbers like he's doing at the moment. Nice. And what about yourself? I see you rocking a nice NBL one.
Yeah, one you've already won, but I just thought I'd check in on our good friend and see what he's up to. So yeah, nice. I'm just going to stand up.
So we'll stand up, rocking the Tassie Jack jumpers. Number 6, Rashard Kelly jersey. Shout out to, friend of the podcast, Woods. Geez, that was an early episode we had him on, wasn't it? Like, I'm going to say maybe in the first 30 episodes. 50th. Well, you're right. Yeah. There's a bit of a milestone one. 50. So, wow, that's a long time ago now.
And look, I was thinking, like, he's the only active player we've had on this show. We've had a whole bunch of great guests over the years, right? 160 episodes. But he's the only player that was still active that we had on the show, right? So, at 50th episode, it was a milestone. And a lot of talk in the media this year around the Tasmania Jack jumpers were that third import, Craig Sword. You're very critical of Craig Sword and the impact that he had. And then Hummer came in and wasn't much better. And it got me thinking, wouldn't a guy like Rashard Kelly have been a great fit in that third import slot at Tasmania, right?
Absolutely. I mean, guys like Sword and Hummer, they're NBL 1 players at best. I mean, I called that early on in the season. Sword, it's not his fault. He got basically picked. I feel like Tassie were maybe a little bit on the cheap there. We're trying to maybe save a few bucks and get someone like him. It was their third import position after all, so let's maybe give him a little bit of slack there as well. The third import. Traditionally, you don't spend as much on that position there, but I agree. I think someone like Rashard Kelly could have given him a lot more. We don't know his contract situation. Maybe he was commanding some more dollars, and I think you're probably going to let us know where he's been since he finished with the Jack Jumpers. But yeah, absolutely, he would have really helped this team. Versatile player, right? He can probably play 2 through to 4, I would have thought, with his skill set and everything else like that. Lovely guy. We enjoyed sort of getting to meet him on the show. And maybe he's someone we can have on as a future guest and see what he's been up to. But I know you know a little bit what he's been up to.
Yeah,
right?
So he's been in Lithuania, he's been in Slovenia, he's been in France, he's been in Japan, right?
He's getting that passport stamped, in other words, right?
Exactly. And it got me thinking, right? And we're going to talk about a long-term import, Perth's favorite son leaving this year. But the life of an import basketball player is not an easy one, right? And I wanted to ask you, this guy, he's going from country to country, going from culture to culture. Not everyone's speaking English, right? In the hope of making a living doing the thing that you love. But it mustn't be an easy process for these guys to go through with young families and kids and having to jump from city to city. What do you think the life of a gun for hire looks like,
It'd be pretty nomadic, wouldn't it? I mean, you look at people like us, Woods, plebs like us, we can sort of get a job after school and potentially work until we're, in our late 60s or something else like that. It's a very short lifespan for a professional basketballer, even more so for someone that's, playing as an import. If you're in a local in any of these international leagues, whether it's the NBL or Europe or Asia, you can potentially play a little bit longer. But these import spots, they're cutthroat positions, right? You're normally only on a 1-year contract unless your name ends in Doolittle there. So it's normally a short contract there. You're traveling from city to city. Some of the situations probably aren't as good. I know Kelly, when we spoke to him, he really enjoyed, the Australian sort of aspect of things. Some of these European things you hear, right, payments not being on time and, crazy coaches and other stuff like that. So it would be tough, right? But I think eventually, ultimately you've got to chase that money, right? If you've got a career that, you might play till your, early 30s, maybe mid 30s if you've, got a healthy body and stuff like that. But you've kind of got to chase the money and set yourself up for the future there. So yeah, it's not tough. But look, at the end of the day, they are doing what they love, right?
Yeah, and you get 15 years to play, maybe 20 to 35, right? Let's just say. And then you can maximize it, see the world, right? And then you'll be set up in a coaching or administration role within the game afterwards.
Yeah.
So there is a trade-off as well.
What if we'd ever see Rashard back in the NBL? You never know, right? You never say never. I think he probably did a good impression. I think he is probably suited as a third import.
Perfect third import, right?
Yeah.
And I'm wearing a Knicks hat today, and I just wanted to, I know the Knicks are one of your teams that you follow closely. Cat's one of your guys, right? Now, they're still holding on to that third spot in the Western Conference. Jalen Brunson's out. By all reports, he should be back by the end of this week. Give him a few
games
before the playoffs.
He'll be back and playing 48 minutes a game in no time, right?
Possibly, yeah, you're right with Thibodeau there. But have you seen the Knicks season this year? Right, last year they were competitive. They had the big trade, getting rid of Julius Randle, bringing in
Yeah.
Karl Anthony Towns. How do you see them this year in the playoffs? Sorry,
One question
in the
before I
Eastern
answer
Conference,
that.
not the
Yeah,
Western
one question.
Conference. I meant to
Yeah,
say
one question
Eastern.
before I answer that.
Yeah,
I'm curious, Woods. Do you have a hat of every NBA team? Do you have 30 different NBA team
I
hats?
think
Just out
most
of
of them.
interest.
Yeah, yeah.
So you'd be
I
pretty
think maybe
close, right?
25 I've got right.
Ooh, so you got to try and get the tick off the rest of that checklist.
My apologies. Just correcting myself. I said the Western Conference. I meant the Eastern
All good,
Conference.
all
Yeah.
good. Yeah, look, they've had a decent season, right? I still feel like they're one of these teams, and I know there's another team we're going to talk about in Memphis that maybe haven't been great against some of the teams with higher records than them, and that's maybe a little bit of a knock on them there. Look, I think there's been some great signs there. You know, you mentioned Katz, my boy, Josh Hart, another, probably a top 5 or 6, one of my favourite players in the league. He's had an amazing season. He actually broke the Knicks record for triple doubles in a season, which is just amazing. I don't think he had any triple doubles in his first 3 seasons in the NBA, playing with, he's a bit of a journeyman, wasn't he? Lakers, and he went to the Pelicans, then he was with Portland there. So
Yeah.
I think there's been some good signs there. I think with a Coach Tibbs team, it's hard to develop some of these, younger guys. So, that's probably a little bit of a worry. Not that they have a particularly young team there, but yeah, I think it's been look, I'd maybe rate it as like a B type season if we're given those old school grades there. But look, there's no doubt about it. If they can get healthy, they've got some horses on that team that could, get them to get a first round victory in the playoffs, and anything's possible, I guess, right? So I'd say it's been a decent season, trying to get a guy like Cat, assimilated into the team there. That was a big change here, and I think he's been amazing, right? I think we might have mentioned he's maybe a sneaky chance of all NBA first team, if not definitely second team.
Second for sure.
Cat, yeah. So I'd say it's been decent. What are your thoughts the same?
Yeah, definitely. I think I think Tibbs needs to really think about what he's doing though, because if he wants these guys to be fit and firing come the playoffs, they don't want to be out of steam. So I think he really
It's
needs
an
to
old
look
school
at that.
approach to the game he's got, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And what do you think right now in the number 3 seed in the East? They'd be looking at facing the Bucks. That would be a good series, man. Would you?
It would. I mean, you probably want a piece of the Bucks at the moment, wouldn't you? Dame Lillard obviously out indefinitely with this blood clot, which is, we wish him all the best with his recovery there. So I think Knicks would be feeling pretty good about a series like that. Home court advantage, playing a team with a lot of injuries. So yeah, and look, like we said, if they get through to the second round, if they get through to that, Final 4 in the East, then anything's possible, right? They've definitely got the talent to go further. And a lot depends on Jalen Brunson getting back healthy.
Yeah, definitely. Really exciting. Only got about a week left till we get into playoffs, right? So looking forward to it, man.
Yeah.
All right, so I thought I'll start off the show. Let's go around the grounds a little bit, right? I got some quick hits for you. So I'm going to start off here, okay? Lakers versus Bulls on Friday. The Lakers are up 5 with 10 seconds.
I heard about this game.
You heard about it? Okay.
Yeah, I think I did.
So the Lakers are up 5 with 10 seconds left in the game, okay? In a series of bad moments for LeBron, he missed a rotation. He left Pat Williams wide open in the corner for a 3, right? He then turned over an inbounds pass, which was stolen by Josh Giddey, and turned into a Kobe White 3. Bulls are now up by 1 with about 6 seconds left, right? Then Reeves goes, gets the layup, and puts the Lakers up by 1 with roughly 3.3 seconds left on the clock. Josh Giddey inbounds the ball to Pat Williams, who gives it back to him. He then goes on to hit a 47-footer over LeBron to win the game. It was the first triple-double game winner combo in Bulls history. Also, the longest ever game winner in Bulls history. This is incredible, but what has to be more incredible is the Giddey's play of the last month. And I'm keen to get your thoughts, not just on that incredible game and sequence, but the play of Josh Giddey since the All-Star break.
I'm loving seeing it. I think, like yourself, Woods, I was watching this live. I tend to, if I'm home, working in the day, I'll have the TV on behind me and flick a few games across. Luckily, I had that one on. And what a special moment. That's one of those moments you'll always remember, right? Like I'll vividly remember that sequence you just spoke about, in 20 years' time, sort of thing there. So, no, look, really impressive what he's been doing of late. I know you've probably mentioned in some of our group chats, perhaps, getting rid of my boy Zach LaVine's been a good thing. You're probably right. It's I like the combination of Josh Giddey and Kobe White as well. I really like what they can offer. Kobe White's become a really underrated player.
Kobe White and 4 white guys.
Yeah, pretty much.
It is.
Right? Yeah.
That's the starting lineup, right?
Yeah.
You've got Buzelis, Herder, Giddey, Vooch, and Kobe White.
And shout out to Kevin Herter, another redhead wearing that famous 13 jersey for the Bulls that Luke Longley formerly
Yeah,
wear,
for sure.
Cool. But look, in terms of Giddey, look, he's always been a special passer. We know that. I think he's really continued to improve his offense. He seems to get to the basket at will there with his size there. I actually think his D has been one of the improvements as well. And that's always been a part of the game that's been lacking there. He's not got the fastest footwork, but at the end of the day, he's a massive unit, right? He's huge, right? He's the size of a power forward basically there, or a good big big small forward there. So the defense has been the impressive one for me. And yeah, I think the future's really bright there. I think he's commanded those minutes. They've had some success there. They're a team that, look, they are going to make the play in there. They could maybe, sneakily win a series if things go their way there. I think they're kind of playing with nothing to lose at the moment, which is a dangerous team to come up against. And look, Woods, my thoughts on this trade. I've made it pretty clear, the OKC and Bulls trade. But look, essentially they traded an aging 31-year-old player who's no more than a role player for a guy that's got, future, star potential in Josh Giddey. So I think the Bulls, it was highway robbery, that trade, and I think that it's really paying off, and it's great to see.
Absolutely. And getting Levine out of there at the All-Star break has obviously helped. Lonzo Ball being out as well has almost just thrust Giddey into a situation where he needs to run this team along with Kobe.
Well, just Sumo's out as well. So a lot of that competition he had in the backcourt at the start of the year when it was quite a heavy guard rotation, it's essentially just him and Kobe White now, right?
Yeah, and I was mentioning on our group chat, it's one of the great turnarounds you'll ever see. I mean, earlier in the year, Billy Donovan was benching Giddey and not even playing him. In certain games, he was not finishing the fourth quarter, playing 15, 16 minutes, and you thought, is his career going into purgatory here? So the turnaround that we've seen is just incredible. A stat I read recently since the All-Star break, or over the last 10, 15 games, I think it was 22.5 points, 10.3 rebounds, 9.2 assists, shooting 52% from the field, 51.7% from three on 4 attempts per game. That is just ludicrous.
What about a combo Woods, Giddey and Dyson Daniels playing for the Knicks Boomers team? Man, the way those guys have improved and what they've added to their game and the size and everything they've got, these guys, I'm really excited about the Boomers' future.
Yeah, he had 8 steals the other day, Josh Giddey as well.
Unbelievable, right?
Yeah. And you mentioned the friendship between Kobe White and him. In the locker room, Kobe White was just talking about how much he's enjoyed playing with Josh and the bond that they're creating over there and the culture, the culture that's being built in Chicago. It seems like a fun place to play. They all like each other. Shout out to our friend Peter as well, who's a diehard Bulls fan who I'm sure is very happy with the progress.
Shout out to Pete. We know he listens to the show each week. So, yeah. And I was speaking actually about him after our game on Thursday night about Kobe White. We're saying how sneaky athletic this guy is, right? He's got the crazy hair in that, but he'll occasionally rise up and just throw one down over a bigger opponent. So, yeah, I think there's some good signs at this Bulls.
Shades of Ben Gordon in Kobe White, right?
Maybe. Yeah. Hopefully a little bit better off court.
Yeah. All right, cool. Let's move on then, man. I just wanted to... I know it's been a tough week for you, right? So... Bryce Cotton announced this week that he would be departing the Wildcats. Firstly, I know it's a very sad moment, not only for yourself and the rest of the Wildcats faithful, but I'd like you to reflect a little bit on his time with Perth and the kind of impact that he's had, not only on your franchise, but the landscape of Australian basketball as a whole.
Yeah, look, it has been a tough week. It's interesting, actually. This news, we recorded last Monday, and the news basically came out the next morning there. So I've mentioned it on the show a few times. Once I saw Bryce's first ever game in Australia, I was lucky enough to, I think he signed with the Wildcats on the Wednesday or Thursday. We spoke to Mason Bragg about this a month or so ago. Played that first game in Sydney. I think you were overseas, right? I think from memory at that time. So I saw him play, and he just, instantly had this impression. Like my mum and I were just like, we love this guy. This guy's awesome. And then, he stayed for the team for so long. So look, it was sad. Waking up last week to the news. Probably it wasn't the biggest shock. I think there was a few, signs out there and, some talk that we probably knew he was going to be moving on. Look, it's definitely the end of an era for just an amazing, incredible career for the Wildcats, but also for the NBL, right? He was one of the more marketable players there. Look, he was a little bit polarizing at times. I know there's a few teams that, complained about the calls he got and other sort of stuff like that, but I think as a whole, he made the game better, right? People would tune into NBL and watch these games to see someone amazing like him. And what he did on the court this year was with those multiple 40-point games there, that's some scoring we haven't seen in this league since, the actual GOAT himself, Andrew Gaze, in the 90s, I would have thought there. So it leaves a massive hole for the Wildcats. There's no doubt about it. I did think the timing that he did was quite respectful by BC there. He basically did it, just prior to this free agency period started. So he didn't leave the Wildcats hanging, which I think is good. You don't want to sort of potentially miss out on free agents, or is he not coming back there? Look, I think it gives, if you're looking at the Wildcats outlook now, it gives them a great chance to recruit pretty strongly. I think if you consider the salary they're going to, save from Bryce and also Keanu Pinner, who seems certain not to return, this could mean us getting 3 guns. So 3 guns for the price of 2 there. And I think, ultimately Pinner was probably a little bit overpaid for the product he was putting on the court there. So if you could replace that with 3 absolute guns alongside Christian Doolittle, who's signed for 3 years, think the next phase for the club looks pretty great. But look, you are replacing, in as I've said many times before, the second greatest NBL player I've ever seen. And it's sad, right? It's going to be very strange, going to a Perth game next year and not seeing him run around. It's difficult, but I guess you've got to sort of move on and just remember the good times.
Definitely. And look, when growing up watching the NBL, like Dwayne McClain, Leonard Copeland, Leroy Loggins, Robert Rose, D-Mac, these guys were like superheroes to us, right?
Yeah.
You looked at them as transcendent. These are the personalities the game needed in Australia. And honestly, there was a lull where we didn't see many of those guys. Bryce Cotton is one of those guys, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's not many, right? That stay around for an extended period of time, get that cult, legend status as an import amongst the Australian folklore. So I think we don't see many of those, and that's one thing that I will always remember him for, right?
Absolutely. No, I mean, he was someone that we'll never forget there. I think he was someone that was maybe a little bit more relatable to people as well, just given his size. He's not, some crazy 6'8" guy with, ridiculous wingspan that's, just relying on athleticism. This is a guy that was just so fit and in such good shape. At the end of the day, he was barely 6 foot sort of, a guard there. So someone that people can sort of see, and not think, oh, that's, not an unrealistic sort of player to sort of, try and model your game or sort of pick up sort of certain parts of his game there. But yeah, I know we've got a question later on in the show sort of thing, but certainly just wish him all the future success there. I'll definitely be always thankful about what he did for, this great club in Perth.
And he did it with humility, just a good person, a good guy that everyone, respected.
I'll throw one quick one back at you, Woods. Do you think of this citizenship, saga that's just basically gone on too long, and do you think that played a part, or do you think he would have gone regardless? Do you think it
Absolutely.
It can't have not left a sour taste in his mouth.
His relationship with the country changed throughout that process. It's evident, and in interviews, he hasn't flat out said, F Australia for this, but he's insinuated it, right?
Well, you couldn't blame him for some of the treatment he got. That whole thing about, they said he was unlawfully there when he was literally sitting in the government office and stuff. It's just garbage, some of this stuff. And, we see a lot of immigrants coming over from various countries like that. They can get citizenship straight away sort of thing. This is a guy that was here all the time, married a local person, had a kid, all those sort of things that tick all those boxes for, for residency there. And it just didn't happen there, just for a bunch of red tape there. So disappointing. And look, you're probably right. It may have played a small part there as well. Yeah.
All right. So breaking news out of Memphis. Okay, the Grizzlies announced they have parted ways with head coach Taylor Jenkins. Let me just give you some stats, Robbie. After over half a decade in Memphis, he has the most wins in franchise history. Right. The news was a bit of a shock. So close to the playoffs. Did you find this surprising?
I'd say a lot of a shock, Woods, would be my sort of. I was absolutely stunned when I woke up and checked my phone. I had to do a double take there. That a team that's currently 44-29 with the 7th most wins in the entire league would let their coach go with 9 games remaining. You never see coaches release this late in the season. We spoke about, a few weeks ago, would Philly, make a move on Nick Nurse? No, they wouldn't, because teams never make moves this late in the season there. So, as you mentioned, he's, most wins in team history, 250 wins there. He's a former assistant with our Hawks as well. I noticed that all his assistants will let go on this move there as well, Wood. So I feel like there's maybe something else to this story. Do you think I could be right there? Just something seems strange and a bit off about this, I think.
Yeah, look, Werner spoke about it a bit. Obviously, he's the Memphis, the years and eyes on the ground in Memphis. And he was saying that he'd lost the locker room, especially JJJ. Ja Morant is more in a peripheral role these days. He doesn't handle the ball as much. And it was untenable, the situation. They lost 9 consecutive games to teams over 500 when you look at it further. And he was, as a pick and roll league, they're the least productive team in the pick and roll in the whole of the NBA, right? And having a guy like Ja Morant, Scottie Pippen Jr., another guy who's really good in on balls, right? And having those kind of results, they were like, we might as well do this now. But the bigger picture is, are we going to go into a stage where coaches cannot bring their own assistants, right? And that the front offices are going to dictate who works with you, right? Because it's always
it's so random though. 9 games left in the regular season to bring in a whole new coaching staff, right?
Makes no sense.
Look, they'll win their first game with my new coach there. I think they might be playing Lakers, maybe. today or tomorrow, I think I saw. So they'll win that one. A new coach theory always works there. But look, crazy news. Like we said, a team that's, really high up in the Western Conference at the moment. They're 15 games over 500, Wood. So I guess you could throw a bit of a counter as well. I feel like he's actually got the best out of some of his young guys this year.
Absolutely.
Guys like you mentioned, Scottie Pippen Jr., guys like Wells, guys that were pretty unknown at the start of the season and have both had really productive seasons. So really strange news. I feel like maybe there'll be more that comes out from this story. But yeah, really, really interesting move there by Memphis.
Tomas Isalio. I can't even
Glad you
pronounce
pronounce that. I saw his name. I'm like, oh, that's going to be a tough one. But yeah, interesting, right? European
teammates
coach,
and friends with Petri Koponen, head coach of the New Zealand Breakers. So he's got the Finnish background there. So
yeah. Well, hopefully they can finish the season well, Woods, because that's a strange move, right? Making a move at this stage of the season.
Yeah,
and it's only the second coach to be let go of this year, right? Which is unusual. So we saw Mike Brown let go of in Sacramento, and Memphis now. So both these teams are going to make the play-in or play-offs there.
Sacramento's on the fence there a little bit,
maybe,
but Memphis is what, 4th or 5th in the West?
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, definitely. They might play, pretty loose now with the new coaching change, and who knows? Maybe they'll do some damage.
All right, and finally, March Madness, man. You and me, we were in the US during March Madness this time last year. Usually it gets to the Elite Eight, and then we start following it and get an idea of who are some of the young talent that's going to be joining the NBA next year. What have you seen so far?
Well, I'm just sort of following the game as, the time of recording, so Sunday the 30th of March, so the Elite Eight, so Texas Tech's playing Florida at the moment in the second half. I know the game we're both looking forward to is the game that's on probably in about an hour or so. So number 1, Duke taking on number 2, Alabama. So a couple of big reasons to watch Duke for those that maybe haven't seen him. So Cooper Flagg, I think everyone's expecting him to be the number 1 draft pick in the next NBA draft. He's got some great talent there. But Tyrese Proctor, Sydney boy, right? So someone that's maybe not got quite that publicity that you would have thought. He was pretty well known a few years ago.
Before.
Maybe, yeah, exactly. But I think he's had a couple of big games in the NCAA so far. I think it was maybe the round of 32 games. He put up really big numbers there. So I don't think he's fully committed to coming out next year, but I think if he does, his draft stock's really risen with this tournament here. So yeah, looking forward to it. Unfortunately, my Michigan Wolverines got knocked out yesterday. Woods always keep an eye on them. But we've got some Tennessee playing Houston and Michigan State playing Auburn tomorrow. So yeah, some really good games to follow there, and it's a good time of year. And like you said, us being massive NBA fans, it's seeing some of these future names and guys that we're going to look forward to seeing in the NBA.
Awesome. So while we're on that topic, I wanted to create a new segment, and I think we're going to keep it going forward as we enter the end part of the NBA regular season, right? We talked about new talent. We talked about people making names for themselves. When you get to this little period of the season where teams are tanking, right? Not really trying to win ball games. Guys come up with fake injuries, personal issues, mystery illnesses, just so they can rest. We've talked about it.
Can I throw 2 of them at you, Wood? So Tyrese Maxey hasn't played for a month due to a sprained finger, and let's not forget Brandon Ingram sprained his ankle in December and hasn't played since. But yes, continue.
And
sprained ankle.
He's being evaluated.
Ridiculous.
He's being evaluated in 4 weeks, and then again evaluated in 4 weeks.
Crazy stuff.
Right?
Yeah.
All right. So what this does, it gives an opportunity for some of these lesser guys on 2-way contracts, guys at the end of the bench, to get an opportunity to play some meaningful minutes and make a name for themselves. Okay, so I picked out 5 different players I wanted to talk about and asked you to do a little bit of homework today on them, right?
And we like the random players as well, Woods. Like we've shown that with our jersey collections over the years. So looking forward to chat about some of these guys.
Of course, and the thing is, these random players may not be so random in a year or two, right? And that's why we've picked them out. And thanks to, I put it out on social media as well, and we had some responses there on another player that I should focus on. So there's 6 guys that we're going to focus on today. So I'm going to start in Toronto, okay? I'm going to start with Orlando Robinson, a center over in Toronto. Over the last month, he's averaging 10.4 points per game, 7.6 rebounds per game, 2.4 assists per game, and he has the ability to stretch the floor. What I've seen with Orlando Robinson, he's a versatile new big man, can do a little bit of everything. I know you've had him on a couple of your fantasy teams and you've followed his progress. What are you seeing with Orlando?
Well, firstly, a lot of these guys we're going to talk about today, Woods, for those that are heavy in the fantasy basketball thing, these are like gold, right? At the end of your fantasy season with these injuries and tanking and stuff like that, these are the guys that are going to help win your leagues there. So I've had him a couple of times, and then Pirtle comes back and he doesn't play. But you're absolutely right. He's been really decent the past month for the absolutely tanking Raptors there. So Robinson was undrafted in 2022. Spent a bit of time in Miami and Sacramento. But look, I think he may have found a home in Toronto if he continues to play how he's been playing now. I know there was a Colin Colin Castletron or whatever he was sort of starting
Colin
over.
Castleton,
Castleton, that's right. It seems like they've, Robinson's the one they sort of like there. So look, I really like, Jakob Poeltl. I'm a fan of him, but this Robinson guy, could end up being sort of a decent, backup big man there. So yeah, he's a good one to start off with, I think.
Yeah, and what I liked about him is his ability to pass out of double teams and create for his teammates. It's a unique skill that a big man, if he owns it, could create more options for his teammates. So he was really good there. 2.4 assists a game on 15 to 20 minutes court time. Very impressive, right? All right, now let's move to Phoenix, okay? Now, what did we talk about Phoenix in the offseason, right? What did we say? They need a point guard, someone to get them into their offense, right? Yeah. We can't have Booker or Beal playing point guard, Durant bringing up the ball. We need a proper point guard. What did they do? Who did they go get?
Well, they went and got Tyus Jones, who hasn't totally worked out. I was kind of high on him at the start of the season. He's been a little bit disappointing. His offense is really lacking there. But yeah, they've got to find that, right?
They have. So they've got Colin Gillespie. I had to think twice. Who is this guy? Look him up. He's on a
It's not TJ McConnell too when you Google him. I know he looks a little bit similar to TJ. It's a different guy.
Definitely. He's got that accountant look to him.
He does. Yeah.
So he's on a 2-way contract with Phoenix. And look, his assist to turnover ratio over the last fortnight has been incredible. 10-1, Robbie. Suns have lost their last 2, but had won 4 in a row before that, and 6 of their last 10. He's only playing 20 minutes a game, but he's doing what I mentioned earlier, what they wanted Tyus Jones to do. A guy he doesn't need to score, doesn't need to do much. He's got stars around him, scoring around him. Get the Suns into their offensive sets, right?
Absolutely. And fun fact about Gillespie Woods, what do he and Jack White have in common?
Did they play in the G League together?
They both won championships with Denver in 2023.
Right,
so
okay.
Gillespie actually had a bit of a role on that team as well, certainly more of a role than Jack White. So that was pretty cool there. But yeah, definitely been a real surprise since taking over that starting job from, Tyus Jones, who I mentioned before. I actually believe they need to convert his contract to a full-time contract prior to the playoffs starting. So they'll have to do that if he's a current starter, right? So they may have to make a little bit of a move further down the bench there. But yeah, I think he's been impressive, right? He's like you said, he's kind of that old school, really great assist to turnover ratio, something we see from the likes of Tyrese Halliburton that's so impressive there. You also, winning seems to follow this guy, Wood. So he was actually part of those Villanova championship teams they're playing in college. So I'm wondering now if the Nova Knicks will try and get this guy to reunite with all his former college championship mates there, and Bridges and Brunson and Josh Hart there. So it's pretty interesting that he's had that success there. But yeah, definitely, he's probably one of the funnest ones I've seen out of this now, because he's really come from nowhere now, and
absolutely
he's really
nowhere
home in the NBA. Yeah.
And I had to go look at some of his stats in college, and he can score the basketball.
Yeah, he had some big games in big moments in college as well for him. Yeah.
Shoot the 3 at a good clip. So this guy who looks after the ball is a playmaker, can knock down the open 3, and has the ability to score. He's got a future for himself, doesn't he?
Do you think he could go on to be an accountant as well if his NBA career doesn't work out or what?
It's possible, man. Maybe. It's possible.
Yeah. He would wear those polo shirts with all the buttons tied up to the top, I would have thought. I would have thought everything.
Sure.
Yeah.
All right, now Dallas. Dallas has been absolutely riddled with injuries, right? Basically only got 8 fit guys to play, right?
Yeah.
One of those guys, Brendan Williams, who I followed a little bit over the years, right? And just have a look at this. So he's on a 2-way contract as well, and over the last month, he's been averaging 17.1 points a game, 4.7 assists on 55% shooting. They've really needed his services. And look, with Phoenix and Dallas, and we mentioned Sacramento earlier, 2 of these 3 teams are going to make the play-in, right?
Absolutely, yeah. He's another one of these surprising sort of, mid-20s undrafted players, isn't he? And as you mentioned, he's put up some really big numbers on a Mavs team that's been decimated, by injuries overall, but also a lot of injuries in the backcourt there. So his play's been really needed there. So he's been a bit of a G League mainstay, hasn't he, for the past few seasons there? But yeah, another one that they'll have to sort of make a call on, and putting up those sort of numbers. I mean, it's a no-brainer, right, to convert that contract to a full-time contract. And yeah, it's a fun one, right? I seem to remember there was another Brandon Williams played NBA maybe in the early 2000s. It's kind of one of those common names, but no, this is a different guy to the one I'm thinking of there. But yeah, showing some good signs there, and you never know what will happen in Dallas to some of the free agents and stuff there. He may end up having a bigger role next season, or probably like we're going to talk about a lot of these players, it's almost auditioning for a spot
100%.
with other teams, right? So it may not be with Dallas he comes back, but he might get a decent contract with another team.
100%, man. This is a shop window for them to showcase what they can do, right?
Yeah.
So on that, Justin Edwards in Philly. I mean, he told me to put him on this list, right? Over the last fortnight, 19 points per game, 4 rebounds per game. Someone's got to play in Philly. You said Tyrese Maxey's making threes. Paul George is out. Joel Embiid is out. Kelly Oubre is out. Like, seriously.
Another guy helping me in my fantasy finals with. I've got him in a couple of teams there. So he's actually a local Philly kid, which is pretty cool. So he's playing on the team. Another guy that came out of nowhere. So he was undrafted out of Kentucky. So it's unusual that someone that's gone to Kentucky doesn't end up getting drafted there. So as I said, the local Philly kid there. And he's exactly like we spoke about before with Edwards there. He's got a couple of weeks now. We know Philadelphia is certainly not going to be, going anywhere near the playoffs. But if you can sort of end this season on a high, he either gets a contract with Philly next year or, perhaps another team, takes a chance on this guy there. But yeah, it's a good success story here, isn't it? I know this Philadelphia team's just been crazy watching them. Like, who's that guy? Who's that guy? Who's that guy? But some of these guys have really shown something, and he's definitely one of them.
Yeah, there's some holes in his game. He does take some ill-advised shots, make some bad decisions, but that's going to come with experience, right? And he's going to learn by getting to play more, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, this is a pretty niche one, but I thought I'd bring this one up. Blake Wesley has started to play a little bit more over the last week. He's been seeing minutes at the Spurs, and the Spurs are already looking at next season, right? So, I expect CP3's minutes to go to him. He was a first-round pick of the Spurs back in 2022 and has never really got a decent run. I think the Notre Dame standout is going to get that opportunity in the later stages of the season. Well, tell me a little bit about Blake Wesley. What do you know about him?
Well, firstly, when I hear CP3 Woods, I've got to say CP3, great bloke, right? But yeah, Blake Wesley, look, it's been a good opportunity for him, right? We know that De'Aaron Fox has gone down. He's a big guard there. He's more a shooting guard, but can, handle the ball a little bit there. So, look, one of those guys that, he hasn't set the world on fire with the numbers that he's putting there, but, he looks solid. And as you mentioned, he's been with the Spurs for quite a while now. So they've obviously seen something in this guy to keep him with that great program for these last few years now. So, yeah, another good opportunity there. I'm not sure what Chris Paul's status is for next season. I'm not sure what his contract is there, whether he comes back. I'm sure someone like him would like to continue playing there. But, yeah, they need to, show some signs for the future there. They've obviously got some great up-and-coming young players, as we know, a certain 7'5" one there. So, yeah, he could be a good part of that future there, and it's nice to see him getting some minutes.
And you mentioned fantasy, right? Like, the Spurs have not much to look forward to, right? They've got 1.5 weeks left. If Chris Paul doesn't play at all and Blake Wesley plays extended minutes in the last 5 games of the season, it could be a guy to pick up on your waiver wire.
They are a terrible team for fantasy players, aren't they? Even Jeremy Sohan, who I thought would great. He's been getting real limited.
Steph Castle, sometimes
he's up and down, isn't he? Yeah.
All right, cool. Now, this is my favorite one, and thanks, Stuart, from the Sport Blokes who mentioned this. Isaiah Collier. I'm a massive fan, and I think he could one day lead the league in assists. He's one guy in this rookie class no one is mentioning, Robbie. Over the last month, he's averaging 11 points and 7 assists. He's that guy who makes those really risky passes that's going to lead to turnovers, right? Jason Williams types, right? You know, but he's going to get those assist numbers up. But as I said, he's been slept on a bit in this rookie class. What have you seen from Isaiah Collier?
Well, did I hear rumours that he may be your next jersey purchase along with the Tumani Kamara one? So
maybe that could be
those guys, the next two you get there. Yeah. So, look, a very strange season for the Jazz. And I'll be absolutely honest and admit that I haven't watched a lot of the Jazz Woods. They're just one of those teams that I see them on League Pass and I kind of flick to the next team there. As much as I, like John Collins, I like Keontae George and a couple of guys like that, Larry Bird. But, at only 20 years of age, this guy has shown some real skills at the point guard position, hasn't he? He took over that starting role from George, which is perhaps a little bit of a surprise. But, yeah, Western Conference Rookie of the Month in February, which is no mean feat there with some of the players that are, sort of playing in the West this year that are rookies there. And I'm also always happy to root for a player from the state of Georgia Woods as well. That's always a bit of a soft spot for those guys. So it got me thinking, actually, do you think perhaps that Collier could sneak into the all-rookie second team?
I think so.
That'd be a chance, right?
7 assists per game. He's leading all rookies in assists, 11 points per game,
Yeah. He'd have to be in the top 10 rookies if you think
for
about
sure.
That way, right?
Yeah. I like his game. I like what he brings to the table, so the future's bright for him. Now, I really like this segment, Robbie, and I might put you in charge of it next year, right?
Sounds good, yeah. Well, like I said, we like talking about the random players, giving some of these guys a bit of limelight and, speaking about them. We like doing the box score deep dives and watching these games and that, but absolutely, these guys are getting the opportunity, and it's great to see this time of year.
And to all our fans and listeners, is there a random player we've missed? Someone you'd like us to talk about? Let us know.
And you can't say Vit Krejci from the Hawks, because we've spoken about him way too much. He was maybe that guy this time last year, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Who is this guy, Vit Krejci? I don't even know how to pronounce his last name. And he's found a home, and he's a real rotation player now. So we'll see some of these guys. It'll be interesting to follow where some of these guys
Jonathan
are.
Merbo, Quintel Post, a few others we can mention. Yeah. All right, cool. Let's jump into some true or false, shall we? I got some really good ones for you today.
Yep.
All right. Ready?
Let's do it.
The new owners of the New Zealand Breakers have appointed Dylan Boucher as president of basketball operations, bringing the former championship-winning player back to the club he was once the general manager of. True or false? This is a positive move by the Breakers.
I've got to say true on this one, Wood. So, look, I think Boucher's got a great basketball mind. I think he's also someone that genuinely cares about his former club as well. So I think he can hopefully turn this new regime of the Breakers around. I think it's going to be an interesting transition period, whole new staff. I think a lot of the players are out of contract there. I think we're going to see a whole new trio of imports there as well. But I think they've got the right man for the job there, and someone that I always had a bit of a soft spot for as well after his time with the Wildcats. And yeah, I think he'll do a good job there.
Yeah, I agree with you. And they've got such a great history. You got guys like Kirk Penny, Phil Jones, Tom Abercrombie. The Breakers could do worse than to enlist their services like Dylan Boucher to assist them, because these guys are culture setters. They've been with the club, and the Breakers have gone through a tough period over the last few years. So bringing back these familiar guys in is definitely going to help. So I agree with you. True.
Yeah.
All right. Bryce Cotton has played his last game of professional basketball in Australia.
Yeah, look, I've got to say true for this one. I don't see any way he does play for another club. I did read on the Aussie Hoopla site, shout out to our boy Dan Boyce there, who's saying Cotton likely to go to Japan. If not, maybe Brisbane's name's in the mix. I thought that was interesting seeing that, but I don't see any way that he goes
Brisbane.
to the team. I couldn't see that happening, right? So, no, I'm going to say a definite no for that one. Look, I'd love to say that he goes to Japan for maybe a year or two and then decides to come back here now. And wouldn't have been great if he could have come back as a local player. It would have been a lot easier. But no, I'll say a true. We've seen him play his last game here, unfortunately.
I'm going to say false. I'm going to say at the very end of his career, his roots are in Perth, his family's in Perth, his wife, his kid, right? Maybe he comes back at the very end of his career in his late 30s and has one benefit season.
I'm all for that, yeah.
Okay.
Nice.
All right. Now, we got news that Kendrick Davis has rejected a multi-year offer from the Adelaide 36ers. My question to you is, true or false? Kendrick Davis will be back in the NBL next season.
I'm kind of on the fence with this one. I'm going to maybe lean towards a false on this one. I think there's definitely a few teams that would like to have him here. I think perhaps he'll maybe chase some of those big bucks on offer in Asia. If he was someone that Perth chased, I wouldn't be disappointed in that. He's certainly got a lot of game with him there, but I'll say probably a false. He might stay in Asia. But look, it would be nice for the league to get someone like this back, because his box office value there is a great watch there.
I'm probably going to just say false as well with you, but like a team like Sydney or Melbourne, right? Imagine Gorge coaching Kendrick Davis. He'd rip his hair out.
Wouldn't it? Yeah.
But I'm going to say false as well, right? And I think, is he too small to be an NBA player?
I think so. Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Unfortunately, but it's just the way it goes, right? There's a reason why some of these guys, Bryce Cotton,
Parker Jackson,
Davis,
Cartwright.
yeah, the law firm and that. That's the reason why they're not in the association.
All right. Josh Giddey will be an all-star next season.
Look, I'd love to say true on this one, Woods, but I do think there are a lot of good guards in the East at the moment. So I'm going to say false to me for next season, but look, I certainly wouldn't rule it out for, say, the next 3 years if he continues to develop his game there. So I'll say a true for now. A false for now, but maybe a true in the near future.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you on that. And as you mentioned, the injuries to Lonzo Ball, the Sonmu, and others have allowed him to elevate those statistics. When they have a training camp and, a full roster next year, those inflated numbers might, and you're not going to keep up 50% from three, 50% from the field forever. It's not going to last. So
yeah, true.
All right, man. It's been a few weeks, so let's do some classic packs, right?
Let's do it. Always down for that.
The Flair 91, 92. We've got one more pack of these, and then I'm going to have to get some new ones.
Sweet.
All right. Let's see what we got here. Okay.
Let's make it a good pack this week. What do you got?
Now, Josh Giddey nearly got a quadruple double. Recently, he had 8 steals, right? He missed out by 2 steals. This man got a couple in his career. Number 34 from the Houston Rockets.
Oh, the dream. It was all a dream. Hakeem Olajuwon. Yeah, well, that's a nice card. Also, what is that? League leaders for blocks? Or for, what is it?
Yep.
Yeah. Nice. You've got to love the dream. I like these cards too. A set that brings back a lot of memories for me.
3.95 blocks per game.
That's decent. That's decent. Yeah.
All right. The Zen Master.
Is in a coach card. Phil Jackson. What is he up to these days? He's a name that I haven't feel like
he's hunting.
His ranch in Montana or something.
Yeah. We saw him on the Luke Longley.
Yeah, that's right.
Story, you know.
He'd be one of those guys that, there's that question of who you have at like a dinner party sort of thing. He would be an interesting guy, right? He's a quirky sort of guy that's probably got a lot of stories over his career there. So yeah, he's an interesting fella, Mr. Phil Jackson.
Okay. This man acted in the 1991 movie Heaven is a Playground. He's also well known to be on that Loyola Marymount team between 87 and 90. Bo Kimball, my man, right?
Nice.
Loyola Marymount.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah. So he was teammates with the late Hank Gathers, right?
Yep.
I think he shot his free throws left-handed, I think, to honour his former friend there. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Big bruising center for the Dallas Mavericks. Went on to play with the New York Knicks. Went to Ohio State University. Great rebounder. Big, tall, 6'11", I think he was. 6'11". Yeah.
Not Herb Williams?
Herb Williams.
Oh, nice. Wow, I love those old Dallas jerseys as well. I was always a fan of those back in the day. I can picture Rolando Blackman wearing that right now.
Never billed as a low-scoring defensive battle, the annual meeting of the NBA's finest has developed into an offensive showcase. It's the All-Star Game card. And we've talked about the All-Star Game and how famous this All-Star Game was for Magic Johnson getting the MVP. Right?
Back when the All-Star Game meant something, right? By the way, speaking of that, did you hear Adam Silver came out this week and just admitted that it was a total failure this year? So they're going to make more changes next year. So I feel like that's just slowly going to die out.
It was worse than ever this year, man. The game itself. By the way, I watched the We Beat the Dream Team documentary yesterday. Outstanding, man. Magic's in it as well, and Rodney Rogers, all those guys who played on that team, Allen Houston, Jamal Mashburn. Anyone who hasn't watched it, go watch it. Okay, from one coach to another. Okay, that most handsome man on the sidelines.
Oh, not Pat Riley.
Pat Riley.
Wow. Yeah, well, certainly the best dressed. I don't know about the handsome area, the slick hair and stuff like that, but I'll tell you what, they don't do those coach cards in these modern day sets. That was something you'd get one back in the day, you'd always be a bit disappointed, right? I'd check this for a coach.
What is the coach doing there? What is he wearing?
He's wearing a suit. Which
enough of these polo shirts and hoodies on the sideline. Yeah,
I've certainly got the money to wear a decent suit every game, I would have thought.
Okay, NBL players not tucking in their jerseys. You have to tuck your jersey in, man. Right?
Interesting.
Yeah, they don't do it. You notice that?
Yeah,
another thing that I've pointed out. Okay, DC. We love this guy. Former #1 pick in the 1990 NBA draft. Yep.
Derek Coleman, I've got his jersey just in the cupboard right next to me there.
So do I.
Big fan of him. That's the old Nets jerseys there. Yeah. Bill Cartwright looking on there. But yeah, he was a really impressive player, DC. Big fan of him.
Shout out to our friend Lee Ellis. I pulled this card and he would be going nuts right now if he was on the show.
So it's got to be the two players. So Otis Thorpe or... It is an Otis Thorpe. Nice. So the theory on that, and shout out to Lee. I was chatting with Lee this week, actually, to see how he's going. Anytime they used to do this on the No Dunks or Basketball Jones back in the day, they would seem to pull an Otis Thorpe card in every pack they did there. So shout out. Otis Thorpe, pretty good player as well. Had a decent career there.
Yeah, definitely, man. Okay. This is the one player on the 1992 Dream Team that could walk off the bus, walk down the street, go shopping, do whatever he wanted, and no one would think twice.
One of the worst hairstyles ever, but also one of the greatest point guards we've ever seen, right? And just a sneaky, underrated player, despite how good he was, John Stockton.
Now, he still has the single season steals record, doesn't he? Looking today, was it him or Alvin Robertson?
There's been talk with hearing his name with what Dyson's doing lately, so yeah, it could be right.
Yeah.
So when they're giving a lot of those stats, they're talking about 2000 onwards, aren't they? So they seem to have that caveat there for steals, and they're talking about guys like Mookie Blaylock and stuff like that. But it wouldn't surprise me. He never missed games as well either, John Stockton. So
yeah.
Also, his son played NBL Woods, a bit of a forgotten guy, David Stockton, right? Didn't quite have the career that his famous Hall of Fame dad did, but yeah, shout out to him for being a pro anyway.
Alvin Robertson had 301 and 3.67 assists, steals per game. That is just nuts, man.
That's crazy, yeah.
All right. Another documentary I just recently finished watching the first 4 episodes of is the Celtics one. Have you heard about it? The docuseries that has just come out?
Why'd you not tell me about that? No.
Yeah, okay, so I've watched the first 4 episodes of it. Thank you for introducing me to torrents, bro, because I've been able to get this
the
stuff.
easy way to get it, right?
Yeah, so the 4th episode just dropped recently, and this guy was covered heavily in it, passed away not so long ago, was the head coach of the Boston Celtics and the Seattle Supersonics, one of the great guards on those early teams with Bob Cousy. Casey Jones.
Yeah.
Great backcourt alongside Sam Jones as well.
I think I'm 100% today, Woods. And what is this with 3 coach cards in this as well? This is random, right?
3 outstanding coach cards, though.
Yeah,
Pat Riley, Phil
ones.
Jackson's, Casey Jones. We'll take him, right?
And at least you haven't said that they're all passed away, like you've had that thing of doing in the past. So shout out to rest in peace to Casey Jones. But the rest are still very much alive.
All right, so Alvin Robertson's teammate on the 91 Bucks, a white guy with almost the identical name. Almost the identical surname. Number 31.
31.
And Alvin Robertson's actually in this card, in this picture.
Interesting. So his initials are AR as well? Or?
FR.
Oh, Fred Roberts.
Fred Roberts.
He had a great flat top as well, Fred Roberts, back in the day. Yeah, I'm liking those old Bucks jerseys as well.
Yeah. And I remember he definitely could fill it up, right? You know?
They had a lot of today in those Bucks teams as well.
Yeah. 1991 season, 10.8 points per game. Yeah.
Interesting.
Right.
You don't have a Fred Roberts jersey in the cupboard anywhere?
No, not at all. And I've got.
Okay.
Is this a? Okay, it is a different All-Star game card. So it's celebrating the All-Star game in 2 separate ways. It's 2 separate cards. You got Michael Jordan on one. I think you got Patrick Ewing on the other.
What do they have on the back of those cards then?
Okay, so one of them.
Quite a few All-Star type cards, didn't we, in this pack?
Ricky Pierce and Michael Jordan appear to be watching an episode of Power TV as the indomitable Patrick Ewing rejects Karl Malone's off-balance offering. So it just tells you a little story about what's going on in the card, right?
Yeah. So random pack, I would have thought. Decent. Like, a lot of coaches and all-star cards.
We got 2 more.
Oh, I still got 2 more, right?
Okay, we got another coach, Charlotte Hornets head coach at that time. The inaugural head coach of the Charlotte Hornet was?
Not Gene Shue.
Gene Littles. Yep, very close.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
And then
he
finally,
looks like, if any of Seinfeld's fans, what's his name? The lawyer on Seinfeld. Jackie, I think it is. He looks a bit like that guy.
and watching the Boston Celtics documentary, they talked about Bill Russell pulling down 40 rebounds in a game. I thought, this is ridiculous. What's the most rebounds this guy has pulled down in a game? And I was talking about this guy's card, who I'm going to show to you, and it was 34. So who's got 34 rebounds in a game?
Got to be the worm, Dennis Rodman, right?
Dennis Rodman.
Yeah. That's crazy. He went through that period, I think, over 2 games where he had, I forget how many rebounds. I don't think he scored maybe in 2 games, and he had like 70 combined rebounds or something like that. So he was an interesting player. I don't know how he'd go in this modern day, right, Dennis Rodman, but geez, he was certainly amazing back in the day when he played.
Yeah. I mean, he'd have to learn to shoot.
Not sure how he'd go with that.
In college, he was a great scorer, right? Before he came into the Pistons. But you're right. Some of these guys, it's an interesting conversation, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right, man. Great show today. Covered a lot. Why don't you take the audience out with where we can be found and followed and all of that? Yeah.
For sure. So, just a reminder to please make sure you like, rate, and subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. We can also be followed on X. Did X get sold yesterday? What did I hear? Or is that, I don't know what happened.
Oh, yeah, something like that. Yeah.
So, at Throwback Hoops, Instagram, throwback.hoops, and email address, throwbackhoopspodcast@gmail.com. You can also, if you're willing to, please pledge, whatever you can to support us on Patreon there, just to help us maintain and get this podcast out every week.
Thanks, Robbie. Look, enjoy the end of March Madness, the Elite Eight, the last bit of the NCAA, and the last bit of the NBA season as we head into playoffs. Any final thoughts, Robbie?
I feel like you're just kind of waiting for these NBA playoffs to start right now. I mean, we're talking about teams like Philadelphia. They just want this season to finish now. It's all going to depend on some of these seedings now. But I think each team's got maybe 7, maybe maximum 8 games left. So it's all happening soon. And NBL 1 started last night, Woods. So that was exciting. So I'm doing my first game next weekend against Sutherland. A couple of former Sydney Kings players on that Sutherland team, or one current, one former. So looking forward to talk about that in future episodes. But no, it's been another fun show with you, mate.
Yeah, you too, man. I'll be there next week as well.
Awesome.
All right, from Robbie and I and the whole team at Throwback Hoops, until next week, peace out.